Good afternoon, everyone. We are live. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're all doing well and in high spirits. We're back with our panel. It's great to see you all. There's a lot to discuss in the world of finance, crypto, politics, geopolitics, and so much more. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the presidential debate. I think it's something we should discuss. And I'm not sure if you guys watched it, but regardless of where we stand politically, I think it's always crucial for us to just pay attention to these events because they give us the insights of how the narratives are being sold to the public. And I believe our panel and our viewers critically think for themselves and they can see through the political puppet show and always look at the bigger picture behind the political debacle. What I found interesting about this debate, though, it seemed like it was almost an intelligence operation because for the first time we saw CNN protect Donald Trump and throw Biden under the bridge. And I found that to be very interesting because it ties us into the broader narrative of getting him out of office and possibly a strategy to even put Trump back into office. So if you guys have been paying attention, I'm talking to the audience here, right? You know how politicians often play both sides. And in my opinion, I think both sides are still corrupt, despite what others may think. And during the debate, my friend and I, Jesus, we were watching the markets. We wanted to see what the reaction was over there. And we saw significant movements in oil, energy, investments by politicians on both sides, Republican and Democrat, while still keeping the public in the dark about the real issues, like the fact that our monetary system is failing. And I think that's the core issue of everything we see happening in the world. So even if you watch the debate, none of the candidates addressed the failing dollar, the economy. They just attacked each other for like an hour and a half. And, there are channels out there right now that are debunking the petrodollars news, but I think they are the ones that need to be debunked because it is still failing. And I want just the audience to understand and recognize that this whole time there's been this covert influence that is trying to shape and nurture this learned ignorance, if you will, which is, I think, aimed at misleading and trying to confuse the masses of the true natures of all the changes we see in the world and the fact that I think a new monetary system is still coming. So we're going to start with my brother, then we're going to move to David and Edo before circling back to myself. Vandell.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, first of all, you can't really convince me that the mainstream media and the entire system is not organized and planned by central planners in one group, particularly. And on your note that you brought up regarding the debate, how they started to attack Donald Trump, I think you saw that on a variety of mainstream news channels. And that's just showing you that the narrative has slightly adjusted in their favor. Because at the end of the day, they control what airs, they give it the green light, and they control the narrative. Okay, so it did shift from the left to favoring the right, in this case, Donald Trump. And the reason is because they're sticking to the script. They did a 180. And that is so obvious that there is centralization and control over the narrative for the mainstream and the public. That's why they did a whole shift. And then all of a sudden now they're favoring Trump and attacking Kamala and the Biden administration. And this is by design. This is not just all of a sudden the circumstances changed, because nothing has changed. It's all the same. They just shifted the narrative now to focus more on protecting Trump. And as you said, I agree with you that this is part of the plan to shift the narrative to potentially give him more positive spotlight and bring him back. I think it's just setting the stage. And on the debate discussions, they talked about quite a few things, but addressing the most critical issues, obviously the U.S. national debt, cost of living, dollar crisis, those are almost equally as important as the illegal immigration issue in the United States, which is all by design. Obviously, at this point, we all know that. But the most critical issues are your cost of living. That's it. It's the US dollar. That's what's killing people more than anything. And the reason they didn't tackle that and provide any solutions or recommendations in the debate is for one reason, because it's bad for politics. Okay. Neither side of the party, whether you're conservative or far left, far right, they can't address that with real world solutions because it's bad for politics and they don't have an answer to it. They can't fix the problem, so they can't talk about it. But that's all I have to say on that.
Well done. David, what are your thoughts?
So when I was, I caught a bit of the debate in the beginning, and of course, towards the end as well, as watching it and this and that. And to me, it was very wild that there were, it was so controlled. There was no live audience. Number one, for a presidential debate, that's insane because the amount of money that can be raised with having people purchase seats to see a debate like that. Number two, these are politicians. Both Trump and Biden could talk on any political subject for ad nauseum. Yet, when they responded to their questions on numerous occasions, they left many, like in Trump, I think one of them was 32 seconds he had left. With Biden, it was something like 80 some seconds and one answer that he was left. And I'm like, it's almost as if they were absolutely following a script. Now, I believe the purpose of this was, for a long time, I think there's been a move afoot to have Biden replaced. And I think that that's a decision that's already been made. I really do believe that this was just a dog and pony show to put out into the public. I think Trump is right in on it with the rest of them in order to have this happen, because I think that they wanted to kind of like put it out there in the public. Oh, how vulnerable he is and all this and that. But I really do believe it's a dog and pony show. I would not be amazed. Look, another thing too, neither one of these candidates have been confirmed by their parties, right? They haven't had their conventions yet. Here we're having this major presidential debate. And I think that was done with intention, because I do believe that by the Democratic National Convention comes along, you're going to see Biden walk out there and do a pass of the baton. Oh, well, we gave it our best fight, but, I need to pass this baton on to the next generation of leaders, And of course, they're grooming Gavin Newsom out there. This guy is a total as far as I'm concerned, libertarian politician, if there ever was one. There's a thing on the California ballot right now where they're wanting to say, hey, if there's any major new taxes, it's going to require 2/3 of their house over there. Plus, there's going to need to be a majority vote from the citizenry, the population. Well, he's gone to court, the Supreme Court of California, Gavin Newsom has, to have that completely removed from the ballot, literally to take away the choice. Now, maybe choice is an illusion, whatever you want to call it, but you can literally see the cards that are being played. And there's a lot of prognosticators out there right now saying, oh, well, look, this, and you have never seen it before. Like I switched over to MSNBC, see what they were saying, on Rachel Maddow's show, of course, with CNN. And it was almost unbelievable, to the level of which they were actually giving credit to Trump. It almost looked like something's off here. It's totally, against the narrative that has been played for the last number of years. And so I just believe that this is a selection cycle, and all we're really watching is theater. And that's what I saw there, because it made zero sense whatsoever, the way in which, and the moderators, I had expected Jake Tapper, who hates Trump and has said so publicly, never one real dart in his direction. Not really, not at all, compared to other pock shots they've taken in the past. And especially since the conviction of Trump being a quote unquote felony, and they never even brought that up. Doesn't that say volumes of what's not being talked about? I think that was huge, absolutely huge. So that's kind of what I think about it.
Yeah, it's a narrative to get him back in office. Edo, what are your thoughts?
I'll give a broader perspective. I am the only one that's not in America, so I might have kind of a different experience to share. And what I see is that there is a spectrum, right? And there are certain topics that are allowed within this spectrum, and that goes for Biden and Trump. And of course, if you're going to ask me which one I prefer, in theory, of course, I resonate more with Trump. I think one would be out of his mind if he would go to Biden's side, right? But we have to understand that none of them are addressing the core issues of the financial system. They're not talking about that the United States, my humble opinion, is a corporation. It's not a democracy. It's not the elected presidents that are going to take the decisions. So for me, it's a corporation that is seeking profits. And I can share shortly I had some experience in politics in Europe, because virtually nobody knows that, because I don't talk a lot about this on my X account, okay? But when the pandemic started, I joined a movement in Italy, and I was going to run as a deputy. It was called Movimento Ripresa Italia, and you can look that on internet. I have videos that went viral. I was giving speeches at the public squares, and that's not even a joke. And that was when COVID was happening. And I started to get very popular. And you guys know that I have the skills to actually take over on social media in certain topics. And what I can share, and that's my personal experience, is that the game is rigged. You know, when I started to get popular, one day I woke up to my social medias and they disappeared. I'm not even joking. My Facebook is gone forever. My X account was suspended for, I didn't even have that many followers yet on Twitter, but I was suspended for 8 months. My Instagram was shut down. I never recovered my Facebook account, and I was getting very popular. So that really made me understand that there are certain topics outside of the spectrum that you are not really allowed to touch. And that comes especially when we're talking about the head of the snake, which my opinion is the central banks. When you really start to give the information on how money works, how money controls the financial system and not elected politicians. And that's the case for Europe, where we have the European, most of the decisions taken by politicians that were never elected by us, the people here. So I do see that in America is a very similar environment. And for me, what is said on national television is never close to the truth, because that's programmed for the masses. And that's how I see massive destruction, and they are not able to address the core issues that should really be discussed.
Yep. And this is exactly what I was trying to reiterate, is that you have to understand, the listeners and all of us. It's just that there's a hidden hand that is trying to shape and influence our perception on everything that's happening. And I think this does tie into the broader narrative of a monetary reset, right? So we're going to move forward. There are a lot of other interesting developments in finance, specifically XRP, Ripple. They recently announced that they are going to be tokenizing gold on the XRP ledger. This is really big news because, you know, we've been calling this for years now, and we believe it's going to happen through the stablecoin market. Now, Ripple hasn't explicitly mentioned that their stablecoin is going to play a role in this, but we are seeing all these developments unfold in that direction, not to mention some of the documents we've talked about in the past. And if I can also get you guys to check out our interview Vandell and I did with Rick Rule, I encourage you to watch it. Now, I understand he's a gold bug, but he shared some very crucial details if you were paying attention. He even mentioned that he knew that the Bank of International Settlements was specifically interested in XRP. Now, what does the BIS do? They are the central bank of central banks. And what have they done in the past? They have reclassified gold as a tier 1 asset class. Do you think this is a coincidence? No, it isn't. It's not a coincidence whatsoever. All these narratives are converging towards XRP being used to tokenize gold for central banks at the highest level. Hence, all the partnerships between Ripple, the central banks, while Ripple continuously and reiterates that XRP is the heartbeat of RippleNet. So it's not really hard to see what's happening here. And I just find this very exciting and interesting because it's all accelerating at this point. And it means we're just getting closer to seeing all of this unfold. And for those out there who don't understand what XRP is a global reserve settlement mechanism that will be used by all central banks and financial institutions. At this point, anyone who does not see this, they are simply not doing enough research. Vandell, what are your thoughts?
You're muted, Vandell.
Sorry.
Okay, before I talk about XRP, somebody in the comments said this, and I want to address it real quick. BuzzPig. Okay, so he said that Trump did address the cost of living issues. What I want to say about that is talking about it is one thing on a public stage, but they're not going to be able to actually resolve the cost of living issue, because the truth is cost of living never goes down. It only goes up. And in order for Trump or any politician to resolve the issue, they need to control the issuing of debt and the money printing. Okay. And they can't. So they can talk about it, but they're not going to actually resolve the issue. They can address it, but they're not going to resolve the issue, because the only way to resolve it is to stop money printing money out of thin air, creating debt. That's the only way you control the cost of living, and they're not going to do that. The Congressional Budget Office just announced a few months ago they're going to issue a minimum dollars of $20 trillion in debt between 2024 and 2034. So they're telling you they're going to create more money and more debt out of thin air. So they could talk all they want about cost of living, lowering inflation, which is totally different from the cost of living. You can have inflation rate going down, but the cost of prices and living aren't going down. As a matter of fact, they're going up. They're two different metrics, two different things. So yeah, they could talk about it, but they're not going to fix that issue. And that's where central bank digital currencies and tokenization comes in, because they're going to need a solution. That's the solution to the issue of the cost of living and higher inflation and potentially even hyperinflation.
Yep.
But yeah, I just wanted to address that. So yeah.
Thank you.
Now, regarding XRP, what we did, so when we had Rick Rule on, he made an interesting statement. This was his quote. He said, the idea that you could have a digital token that represented physical gold could be exchanged for physical gold, but could also enjoy lower denomination, more liquidity, and less transaction costs is a reality in the not too distant future. That's what he said. And he also said that I similarly have noted in the quarterly from the Bank for International Settlements their own interest in XRP. And he said this is recent, because we talked to him off camera as well. And this was a recent conversation he had with some people also at the Gold Council, which is extremely fascinating, because we're not talking about documentation from years ago. He was telling us this is extremely recent, and he's very much affiliated with these organizations and the World Gold Council particularly.
Yep.
So that's where we're going. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Vandell. And also, you made something clear. He also said it was imminent that we were going to have a representation of physical gold in a digital format. I made a short about this. So yeah, thank you for that. David, what are your thoughts?
So when it comes to real world tokenization of real world assets, of course, there's only a few ecosystems that can handle the volume that is going to be required, to manage this new economy. And absolutely, Ripple has been working hand in glove with the Bank of International Settlements for a number of years. And primarily, if you want to research this, you can go look this up. It has to do a lot with the interoperability piece between central bank digital currencies, because closed ledger systems, closed distributed ledger technology systems, are what CBDCs are built on. Now, each sovereign central bank is going to have their own central bank digital currency. Now, I do not believe any one of them will ever form a world reserve currency, but you are going to need a reserve currency that everyone is going to be wanting to agree on. Now, you got central banks that for the last decade have been accumulating gold into the thousands of tons. I mean, thousands of tons. And here they are, all on fiat systems that are not backed by anything, and especially not by any commodity like gold. So why, oh, why have they been doing that? Well, I think they know the reason why. I think we all know the reason why is because they are leading us to an absolute implosion of this system. Now, when that happens and you watch a catastrophic situation or event take place around the wide world that will make what this was going down back in 2019 look like a birthday party, as far as I'm concerned. When that happens, the confidence that folks have in these governments and these economies to secure the purchasing power of their dollars is going to evaporate like that. Well, how do you get that confidence back? For any central bank, did any type of new monetary system, you're going to have to back it with things that people will be willing to trust. Now, number one, they will be willing to trust God's money, which has been God's money for over 5,000 years, gold. Number one, because we know almost every ounce of gold that has ever been mined. That is mind-boggling. But they do know that, and they know the gold reserves, what's in the ground and what's available. The thing is this: the next iteration of any type of a global reserve currency that all nations would support and interact with, I believe, has to be agnostic, meaning it cannot be tied to one nation state. And it's going to be based on distributed ledger technology. I've said this before, and that distributed ledger technology, I absolutely 100% believe will be backed by either gold or a commodity or a basket of commodities like gold, silver, oil, and things like that. And the reason for that is you're going to have to get back the confidence of the people in the financial system. You're only going to be able to do that with real world assets. Now, the tokenization of real world assets, like what's recently happened on the XRP ledger, is not to be minimized. That is right out there. They are telling you what the future is going to be. Everything will be tokenized.
Yep.
It'll start with the tier one assets for sure. But you watch and see if not everything, including your identity, will be tokenized. We are moving into that world, and it's happening way, way, way faster than what most people genuinely believe. And so what you're seeing right now, the central banks, like Vandell so eloquently said, they have been inflating. And we're talking trillions of dollars every quarter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is a massive, bubble that is going to eventually absolutely burst. We know it, and they know it. Don't kid yourself. It's part of the plan. They've had this all sorted out from way, way back. And that's why, I love to say it this way: the guys who set the fire are going to be the ones that show up with the hose. We've got a solution, and that's what I think is going to go down. So I think it's a massive, massive, massive indication of where we're going, and it shouldn't be minimized. People should really be paying attention to that.
100%. If I can also make a quick statement before you, Edo, is that central banks know that wealth is simply going to move from one set of assets to another. And that's, again, why they're holding gold, buying up gold, and select digital assets. This is where it's all going. Another thing is I am dropping the link to our video with Rick Rule in the comments here. So if anyone does want to watch that later on, that would be great. It was invaluable information. All right. Sorry about that, Edo. So Edo, what are your thoughts? Like to hear it.
I couldn't unmute myself. So I think we have all the indicators, because if you say there is only one indicator, but everything is actually coming together. I want to remind you that both the IMF and the Bank of International Settlements both classified XRP as a stable coin. And it's a very complex topic, right? But the way I really see it, and this is just me thinking out loudly, and I also maybe want to hear your thoughts, it's XRP tied to an algorithmic stablecoin is going to ensure its stability, so that we have cross-border payments with less price volatility, even though 3 seconds is quite fast. But we're going to be handling, I think, quadrillions of dollars, the entire wealth in the planet that might run on the ledger. Then we need some sort of stability. And I think not only the stability, but also the trust really comes from tangible assets like gold, silver, perhaps oil as well. So I don't see any way out. And this sentence, I think I heard from Versan the first time, that any stablecoin that is not tied to tangible assets is just a repackaging of the current broken financial system. So besides XRP being classified as a stablecoin. And I don't think that's a coincidence. And I see a lot of people criticizing that, and they want to be more correct than the IMF. And I think that's very interesting. Whenever you go out and you post the documents online, you're going to have this bunch of people that they are so arrogant that they think they know more than the IMF, and that IMF is doing mistakes on their papers, right? Anyways, I also said this already on this show, and I will repeat one more time. I met one company that is tokenizing gold on the XRP ledger, and I spoke to the founder. I'll not say names here, but he was approached by Ripple, and Ripple has tried to acquire this company that is tokenizing gold on the XRP ledger. So there's a reason why Ripple is so interested in companies that are actually, and this company actually has tokenized gold. And I just want to reiterate to everyone here that, in my opinion, the timeline is coming shortly, because the fact that gold is making new all-time highs is already an indicator that they have accumulated enough gold, because we know that central banks are the biggest buyers of gold in the last decade. They're just doing the opposite what they did 20, 30 years ago. So the fact that gold is already making new all-time highs, for me, it's really an indicator that we are getting very close to conflictive times. I would say, I'm not sure if I would say a war is coming or a financial crash is coming, but the fact that central banks are accumulating gold, for me, is number one indicator that there is a major transformation that's going to happen, and it's going to happen shortly.
100%. You know what? I was thinking before we talk about the altcoin season, maybe we can just jump into gold real quick because we're already on it. Might as well. Let's touch just lightly on it, though. Gold and silver. Those who truly understand just how these markets work, you know that they are immensely suppressed, and for many reasons. The last time Andy and I spoke, he made a very good point about the suppression of precious metals and how price discovery is going to be recognized eventually. So there's a BRICS meeting coming in October, and I speculated that the Shanghai Gold Exchange is going to introduce their gold standard, and they're going to go ahead and set the price from there moving forward. What I'm trying to say is that the suppression of the metals market, it might be coming to an end. And again, that converges too with what we're talking about here: central banks buying gold, tokenizing physical assets as well. So I think also you have to bear in mind that what's going to end the price suppression is also how when these institutions start running to get their physical gold and rush all these orders in, because 90% of all the gold right now is paper. It's not physical, which means that they can't keep the price down forever. And when that ends, you know, whether it's tokenized or not, it doesn't matter. It's price discovery is going to be there when people demand the physical gold. And that's, again, not going to be enough to meet the demand that's already there. And I'd also like to mention and reiterate the gold reevaluation. Now, if central banks, they've publicly talked about this, and they haven't explicitly mentioned it on the website, but if they want to shrink their deficits, all they would really have to do is reset the gold price. And that has been discussed openly. So I think they've always had that in the arsenal. Now, I think they're just waiting for the right moment and time. And I think that's where everything is converging. But they are also, in the meantime, distorting asset prices. And don't forget, they're impoverishing an entire nation of people. And who knows what the true motives are behind that, but I think we have a general idea. So, Vandell, what are your thoughts on the suppression of precious metals and just gold and silver?
Yeah, so it's been suppressed for ages now. It's still suppressed heavily. Specifically, silver is even more suppressed than the gold price. However, they're both suppressed greatly. A lot of our discussions with people in the financial sectors, precious metals, wealth managers have come to the same conclusion based on the debt. The price would have to be pretty high up there for 1 ounce of gold, for example. Now, the thing is, the reason they've been suppressing it for all these years, and they're still suppressing the price through paper, gold and silver, and contracts, is because they're accumulating as much as they can. That's why they're suppressing it. they want to create the illusion, and they want to make it look undesirable. If they let that price run and do what it should do and appreciate accordingly as the debt does, then that would create a desire for people to accumulate more gold and really start focusing on precious metals and real tangible assets. So, in essence, they're suppressing it so they can buy as much as they can and create an illusion that there is no demand and there is no crisis. That's why they're suppressing the gold price. And they're buying at records every year on an annual basis. And they're still accumulating till today. There's no other explanation for why they would suppress the gold price. It's just so they can accumulate as much as they can before they flip the switch and before shit hits the fan. And the second reason is because, as I just said, it makes it look undesirable and like everything is okay, but it's not. So that's their incentive for manipulating the price.
Good point. David?
I absolutely agree. I mean, we know the price manipulation of the precious metals market has been happening for a very long time. And just to present something here, I'm just going to share my screen if we can do this for a quick second.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And what I want to show you here is just a quote here. Look at this right here. JP Morgan entered into a 3-year deferred prosecution agreement through which it paid, get this, more than $920 million, almost $1 billion, in a criminal monetary penalty, criminal disgorgement, and victim compensation with parallel resolutions by the Commodity Futures and Trading Commission and the Securities Exchange Commission. Now, this came out August 22nd, 2023. So not even a year ago, it's paying almost $1 billion for manipulating the precious metals market. That's just a cost of business for them. Because of cost of business, we know for a fact that these metals markets have been manipulated for a very long time. One time there's one out there called Scotia Makata, and they did an audit, I believe, on them. And, with an ETF, where when you are dealing with spot exchange traded funds, you are required to have that, the spot ETF has to hold the asset, physically hold it themselves, right? Yep. Well, they did audits of all these. A lot of them fall short. A lot of them do fall short. And so, and if you go out there and you attempt to purchase a significant quantity of physical metal, gold, silver, whatever, you're going to pay a high premium over spot to get what you want. Mm-hmm. It is just a fact. And so demand is off the Richter scale for physical. And yet we know for a fact it's being manipulated. So if in fact you were able to withdraw, if they were able to blow away all of this manipulation, I think overnight you would see massive, massive appreciation in the price of gold and silver, and it would be into the tens of thousands of dollars is my estimation. That's what I believe would happen. And let me just stop sharing that. Yeah, so that's what I think. I do believe it's absolutely a fact. We've been seeing it, and we know that most markets are manipulated one way or another. Most markets, and especially this digital asset space. I mean, look at XRP, for instance. If you were just to look at the fundamentals of this ecosystem, there's no reason on earth we shouldn't be at $7, $8, $12 by now. But we know it's being intentionally manipulated, fudded to the nth degree. People have been terrified of holding it or have been shaken out and on and on. And I think, as Etta was saying earlier this week, a day will come when you're going to look at prices that we're seeing today. People are going to weep for those prices. That's my personal belief. And I believe it's because of what's going to be coming down the road. And you're going to be asking yourself, why, oh, why did I buy the malarkey? And I'll give you a personal example for that. I was a special enforcement officer working in the underground economy in Canada. And I did that job from 2008 to 2011. Now, I was with the Department of Canada Revenue Agency since 1997. So I had a great level of experience even up to that time. When Bitcoin came out, most of us ignored it in 2009. By 2010-11, that thing had picked up a reasonable amount of steam with the underground economy as a means of consideration because they believed the government couldn't track it. Well, that was a fallacy. That was a false belief. But needless to say, back at that time, it was only like 25, 30 cents. And I remember Judy coming to me, my wife, and saying, hey, what do you think? Do you think we should get involved in this? I'm like, considering the people I'm investigating, tax cheaters, drug dealers, deviants, I said, nope, not going to touch it. Drank the Kool-Aid myself, trained field officers how to go out and investigate this stuff. I served that Kool-Aid up. I was absolutely buffaloed. Don't let an opportunity pass you by just because of the narrative of somebody you think should be in the know, because the people in the know are what or who's out there trying to keep us in the dark. And that's our personal experience right there.
100%. Edo, what are your thoughts?
I love what you said, David, about looking at Bitcoin a long time ago. When I was a teenager, I was actually very active and I was researching in Bitcoin, and I had a discussion on Twitter. I didn't have followers back there, but I got an answer from Joe McAfee. You guys know McAfee? He was a very prominent figure on the Bitcoin community. And I remember that I was criticizing Bitcoin. I was saying things like, no, Bitcoin is used for illegal operations and to fund terrorism and all of this stuff. And he just demolished my answer. And he just said something like, you know what else is used for the same purposes? And he said, the US dollar. And that was a big lesson for me a long time ago. And I still have this tweet, the original one. And it's very funny. Now, regards to the price manipulation, it's not only gold and silver that are manipulated. I think every financial markets, that sounds a lot like a conspiracy, but the more you actually take your time to do your own research, and that there comes things like David just shared on the screen with the fine, and someone in the comments said that they make that fine every day of the week. So for them really to pay $1 billion in a fine, they're manipulating the entire markets at a global scale. And not only them, but also Rothschild families that I have been digging some research on that, have been putting some threads on my Twitter. And that's a fact that precious metals, stock markets, crypto markets are highly manipulated. And one great example is the SEC lawsuit. You guys remember when they dropped the SEC lawsuit and the price of XRP suddenly started to drop, and it went all the way through 16 cents. And I bought a lot in that day, but you can be sure that I was not the only one buying that XRP, and the price was not going up because of retail investors, because if you guys remember, it was just a few minutes or perhaps hours that it was at 16 cents, and then price started to go up, and we had quite a bull run all the way to 180. And you can be sure that in the day they dropped the SEC lawsuit, you had some of the financial institutions waiting on the line to actually get their hands on XRP at cheap price. I was there that day. I know exactly what happened. And the same goes for most financial markets, most cryptos. Look what happened with FTX, all the money laundering scheme that was sent to Ukraine. I don't even want to get deep on that because there's a lot of censorship when we talk about these topics. But as a matter of fact, I would say that the markets are highly manipulated, but someone also said very wisely on the comments that that's also a blessing for some people, because thanks to the market manipulation, you are actually able to accumulate digital assets that have strong fundamentals at very cheap prices, as is the case for XRP. XLM was trading below 9 cents last week. It's just incredible. XDC, HBAR, most of the ISO 20022 are extremely undervalued, and that's thanks to the price manipulation. And I would argue that you only antidote against the manipulation is your patience. So basically, you're going to be accumulating these digital assets, and you're really going to stick to the plan. You're not going to take emotional decisions. You're not going to jump into new meme coins, or how many meme coins on Solana are coming out on a daily basis. And it's tempting because I will tell exactly what happens. And this is all by design, by the algorithm, especially on Twitter. You get to see all these screenshots by insiders, and you hear these stories. The one dude that made 15 millions with a meme coin, and all of this. Sorry, I call it bullshit. And then retail investors see this and they think they can do the same, and then they're gonna play with the real investments that they have or with the life savings, and these meme coins are gonna drop to zero. And unfortunately, you're not gonna hear about the ones that are losing the money. You're gonna hear about the 1%, the 5% that got lucky. And honestly, if the principle is to gamble, I prefer to go to the casino, grab a Cuban cigar and actually some whiskey and go with my friends and have some fun. But honestly, to be sitting and gambling your money, I think you have better ways to just invest and have patience. And on the long term, the chances of success are extremely high. That's how I see it.
Nicely said. A lot to unpack in what you said before we move on to the next topic. But one thing I'd like to reiterate is that the return, I think, to a gold standard is inevitable, despite what these economists are saying, right? You have to factor in also, like my brother said, the global debt. It's necessary to factor that in to determine what the gold price is going to be needed to restore the confidence in there. And then finally, you need a digital representation to facilitate the seamless value and transmission among the institutions. And we believe XRP is going to play a role in that. As far as the SEC lawsuit, I did put a tweet about this recently because I get it now. It's a much bigger thing. The XRP is not an American issue anymore. It's a geopolitical one. It really is. And when you understand the technology and what it's being used for, then you know XRP is not just a currency again. It has the potential to act as that cross-border reserve settlement currency, very similar to how the dollar operates. So as the dollar goes away, as far as confidence in it, there's going to be something to take its place. And that's, I think, where all of this is converging to. So you guys agree with me on that? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, moving forward then, I know we were going to discuss the altcoin season. So we'll touch on that very briefly. But I've been watching the central banks and the M2 money supply. Interestingly, it's continuously going up, and it's mimicking the same patterns as we saw before the pandemic took place. And I think that's very interesting because shortly after the M2 money supply was going up, when the pandemic started, that's when we saw a significant expansion of debt. We saw higher stock prices, crypto price. That's the crypto bull market that took place, higher prices in commodities. Unfortunately, though, we did see more currency devaluation, asset distortions. So the rich did get richer while the poor got poorer. So, ladies and gentlemen, you want to be on the right side of all of this when this starts to take place, because we are approaching a significant bull market, if you will, or the expansion of debt naturally. That's going to result in a higher in a bull market. So the only concern that I really have is the fact that we see the escalation of war. And, you know, it's truly sad. Like I talked to you guys about this off record, but to acknowledge that war, for instance, is the catalyst for the markets to go up because they have to print more money, expand debt, and even look for another crisis to justify creating more money out of thin air. And I think this is all naturally part of the consolidation process as well when you look at this the bigger picture. So I just want the audience to also be mindful of this, because while we're here trying to, you know, make a living and get wealthy from this transition and profit, there are a lot of people in the world that are already suffering, and it just really bothers me, you know, and it serves as a reminder to how sick the people are who really run the show here. So Vandell, we'll start with you.
Yeah, buddy, I agree with you. Well, what Ido said, that it's not worth it to take all this risk into these short-term gains, particularly meme coins and, you know, all these tokens that a lot of the media is putting a spotlight on, particularly on Twitter and different social media platforms. You see people becoming millionaires off this token, that crypto, and this is a lot. There's a lot of propaganda here. Okay, they want to keep your eyes off the gem, and they want to keep you distracted with a bunch of bullshit. There's a very high risk there, and a very low potential that you actually do make a significant amount of money. For example, we have a cousin that he made over $1 million in his account on from buying a meme coin. Okay. Now here's the thing. He was unable to. He made $1 million on paper. That's what his account was reflecting, but he was unable to sell it. And the reason was because there wasn't enough liquidity. And so he's a millionaire on paper, but he's really not, because there's no liquidity. So yes, you might see a news article of somebody made $1 billion, which I have a friend who made over 70 billion on paper, and this was in the last bull run. But guess what? He couldn't sell it, and he had issues, and he never sold it. It's nothing. It's worth nothing, even though it was reflecting 72 billion with a B on his account. But he couldn't sell it because there's no liquidity. So the point I'm getting at is, yes, you could make money on paper. It would show you how much you made in your account, but you might not be able to sell it. So you just wasted your money for nothing, because there's no liquidity and not enough trading volume taking place for you to cash out. So it's not worth it. I agree with Edo. If you want to succeed in this game, you need to develop a long-term investment strategy and a mindset. Don't follow your emotions, follow your plan, and you'll be set. But a key attribute is patience and discipline. If you don't have that, then you might as well just go play the lottery and waste your time with something else. Now, Versan, you brought up the altcoin season. So I have my notes here, and I wrote a small article on this. So we're not in altcoin season yet, officially. And I have a few reasons for why we're not. And this should give you a clearer picture of our current position within the market cycle. So first of all, there's several indicators we use, okay? But one of them is the altcoin season indicator. So it's extremely low, which means a lot of the money has not come into the altcoins yet, and they're not appreciating in value currently. Since November of 2022, few have actually surpassed their all-time highs against Bitcoin. Just a few. And I think it's about 8 or 9. So that's one indicator. Another one is many cryptos or digital assets remain still a minimum 70% below their all-time high. I mean, a lot of the extremely superior digital assets are way below their all-time high. XRP, XLM, XDC, HBAR, and the list goes on. Velo, SHX, very, very below their all-time high. Bitcoin's dominance is currently, it was about recently 56% of the entire crypto market. And it's crazy because the altcoin dominance hasn't even reached levels since the previous cycles. Altcoin dominance. And the last big bull run, Coinbase retail trading volume in Q4 of 2021, retail trading volume on Coinbase was about 177 billion. You know what it is now, like today, this year, Coinbase retail trading volume for the first quarter of this year is 56 billion. So we're about 68% down. I mean, that's just so many indicators that bull run season, the bull run for altcoins and digital assets has not even gotten started yet.
Yep.
We're not there yet. So there's a lot of time to accumulate these digital assets because we're still early. And it will start kicking in, I think, a few months from now or as we move in to the later of the year.
Yes. Before, David, we move on to you, can I just throw in a quick statement? I encourage everyone to stay away from meme coins. All right. If you want to make a little potential money here, have a little diversified portfolio, that's fine, but I don't recommend it. In fact, at the end of the day, this is all going to be on real utility, use case, and liquidity. If you got those, that's it. You don't need to do anything else. If I were you, what I tell people is to focus on on making money, because the inflation is most likely going to wipe out most of the people. And they're going to have to sell the assets that they can no longer afford to keep just to keep up with the high living standards. And that's going to come because they're going to keep printing more money. David.
So yeah, I would agree with what you just said there as well. I think that when you're getting into this space, of course, a lot of times people get into space not really knowing a whole lot about it, and there are so many distractions. There's people that even still fall for the, hey, if you send me 1,000 XRP, I'll send you 5,000 back, and things like that. You want to take the time to truly get in there and understand the space and see the future potential based on the fundamentals, because the fundamentals are what's really going to, change the wide world, real world tokenization of assets. That we are entering into a phase where you're going to see decentralized identities on, our identification built on distributed ledger technology. Now, the biggest question that we all get asked in this space as influencers when it comes to an alt season is when. Oftentimes it's when. Now, I don't necessarily put a quote unquote date on it. I put more of an environment on it. So for instance, once we start getting more and more regulatory clarity, and MiCA has just brought into full implementation, and Edo, you can correct me if I'm wrong, in Europe right now, and that is a massive, massive deal with respect to this space, especially when it comes to stablecoin legislation. The United States is following suit with its FIT 21 bill that just recently passed the House and is heading on over to the Senate. And we got massive support. It was a Republican-led bill, 71 Democrats during an election season, mind you, crossed the floor to support this. I think they know what's coming. And I want to share my screen and show you something else that I thought was very, very interesting. Just recently, in fact, this just came out, and or at least the news of it just came out, but I think it says a lot as an indicator. Now, this particular article, it's off of Zero Hedge, came out on Sunday, and it's about a new regulation, new crypto tax reporting rules that the IRS has adopted. Now, what I want to point out, I don't want to get into all the rules or anything like that, but this is what I want to point out. The U.S. Department of Treasury and the Internal Revenue Services, so combined with the Treasury, published a final rule on Friday that requires cryptocurrency brokers to report details of digital asset transactions to the agency. Guys, look at the date that they've got in here. The final regulations announced today will require brokers, now get this, to report gross proceeds on the sale of digital assets, get this, beginning in 2026 for all sales in 2025. Now, why, oh why, would they not just put those rules in and implement them in 2025 for 2024? Because I believe that they know, man, they are expecting that a lot of folks in this space are going to go out there in 2025 and more than likely see some amazing profits. Now, that's particularly the timeline I'm looking for is into the end of this 2024 into 2025. And, I don't guarantee that. That's just my estimation. Certainly, a lot of factors fall into that. Obviously, if we had a quote unquote black swan or whatever you want to call it, if we're dragged into global conflict and war, all of that can play a part. There's no doubt about it. You have to take the macro environment into the situation. That's why I say it's easier to project an environment than it is a date. But needless to say, are they not getting their ducks in a row for when that happens? You had better believe they are. And they're expecting, they know, look, very small percentage of people truly invest in digital assets in a big way. Now, they might have some exposure to it, but the IRS for the last number of years has been asking people, what other thing did they tell you you have to report that you have bought? Do they say, oh, did you buy 3 houses? Did you buy a new car? Nope, but you got to report that you bought crypto. Whether you sold it or not, you've got to report that you bought it. So look, they're expecting something to take place now. I absolutely believe that in this space, when Judy and I got into it, look, that we were into it for 13 months. Now, as I've said, if you've heard my story, you know that we didn't even know we were buying it on the floor. But for that 13 months, it was mostly tink, 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 tink like this until the last 6 to 8 weeks. Bam! Just like that fast. It was wild. And it happened so quick. It became revolutionary, for us, obviously in our lives, having worked 25 years. to get a pension. No, not a golden parachute, but it wasn't a lead balloon either. But needless to say, what we were able to obtain in digital assets in that 13 months made up for almost 25 years of accumulating a pension. That's how wild this can go. Most people aren't mentally prepared for it. I'll tell you that right now. But I do believe an alt season is coming. And I think that the powers that be believe one is coming as well. And I think on a macro environment, we can see why, because of the adoption. And once that adoption happens, listen, all that risk is gone. All the risk that we have today, where we can get them at these prices so low and high risk, that's going to be evaporated. What do you think is going to happen? Well, the reward's coming down with it. That's just how it works. That's how markets works. Less risk, less reward. It would not shock me to see that. And yet today we have opportunities to accumulate at such a low amount compared to what impact these things are going to have on the way the world works in the future. So for me, it's the fundamentals. I don't even think about meme coins. Don't even play around with that. I just go for what I know is going to change the world and what we can see is being used. And so that's kind of how I think about it.
If I can make a quick statement before Edo, is that long time ago, I did play around with meme coins, but when I really began to understand that it's the technology, it's the distributed ledger technology that the institutions or the powers that be are after, that's when I kind of decided to just stay away from meme coins, even though I've missed out on some opportunities, but I've been investing in what is going to bring me the greatest return on investment in undoubtedly the greatest wealth transfer in history. And I think, again, that window is closing because everything that we talk about in the geopolitical landscape is getting us to that place. Edo.
Thank you for the comments, Versan. And I also did mistakes in the past. And I think that's the beauty of us being on this position right now, so that people can learn from our mistakes and they don't have to go out and do the same mistakes. I think that's the best way to learn. And unfortunately, I didn't have nobody to teach me in the past. I remember back in 2020, I did some fatal mistake, and because XRP was not moving, and I traded a portion of my bag for a new coin that was going to get released on Binance, and that ended up terribly. I burned like 25% of my bag back there, and then I had to watch the pain of XRP going up in the next 3 days after it really took off, and I lost a lot of money just because I was not patient. Nowadays, I learn I don't do these mistakes anymore, and I think that if you are listening to this podcast, I wish that when I was getting started in crypto, even though it was my second cycle already, I had someone to actually really tell me how the things are. We're not here telling lies. We are actually telling the things as they are. And sometimes by telling the things as they are, you get even less popular than saying things that you could get 1 million likes because you're predicting XRP for $100,000 tomorrow. It's not how it works. Now, what I do think is that Versan knows this because when we used it to do the live streaming, just me and him, there was a day I call him and I say, look, I cashed out, I closed many positions, and I went from around 25 coins down to 12. I did cash out near the all-time high because I was very conservative, especially about what Vandell has said before, which comes down to the volume. So when we compare the volume 2024 to the previous all-time high of Bitcoin, it's actually less than 40% of what it was in the past. Also, the order books are it's just a fraction of what it was before. What we can learn from this is that in order to make a new all-time high, you don't need a lot of volume. That's interesting, right? But in order to have, let's say, a strong support level, you do need volume. So what we have right now is a very weak position, almost like inflated. That's how I call it, because we are just one news away from a 20 or 30% correction, and that's not out of the equation. That's why my strategy right now, that are my fundamental assets, which I don't sell them. I don't sell XRP hoping that tomorrow I'm gonna buy at 30 cents. I do have some other books in case I want to add to my position, and I'm prepared psychologically if there is going to be a drop in the markets, because as I said, with low volume, the price fluctuation can be actually massive. So that's how I see it.
Sorry, I was on mute. Great point, Edo. Just for the audience, we are coming to an end. We're already past an hour. You know, these conversations can go on forever. And this is what we love to do, you know, but
I
I'd
try
like
to
to
keep
make it.
my last answer short because I see that we are already 1 hour and 20.
Yeah, I can't even remember. It's okay.
I'd like to say
So
something.
yeah,
ahead.
we're gonna go back to you so everyone can give their final thoughts. But this is really my final thought. And you know, those who have been supporters of our channels, if you guys do listen to us, we don't just talk about XRP. There are a lot of other technologies that we discuss and its use cases as well. But you have to understand there are people out there that are telling people there's going to be one coin to rule them all, and we I don't think we believe in that. You know, it's these technologies to a degree they complement each other. They're targeting again different niches in the global marketplace, so they're not really competing with each other. They're complementing each other. Unlike like Solana, Solana is trying to compete. That's not going to happen. Anyways, but also some people ask me the question like, Versan, when do I sell my XRP? And I want you to understand, this is why I tell everyone to have a diversified portfolio personally. And I've discussed this with you guys a lot off record, is that I would never sell the XRP. I don't ever recommend selling your XRP. And here's why, because converting your XRP into fiat currency that's losing value rapidly, I think is counterproductive. The initial idea was to, you know, to take profits from a bull run from other digital assets that probably don't have the highest return on investment like XRP would. And the reason XRP is going to have the highest return on investment, in my opinion, it's because you are essentially a liquidity provider. You are essentially a central bank. You can become the buyer and lender of last resort. And that's why I think this is such a geopolitical issue. And that's why it's taking so long, right? It makes you act into a central bank by owning a piece of the infrastructure. So there are other technologies out there. I will be posting this on my members only. You know, I'll put it on the public one for everyone to see what I invest in. And we've been very transparent from the beginning. So those are my thoughts. And thank you guys for, like, you know, being so supportive and stuff. Vandell, what are your final thoughts?
Well, I was going to say regarding what Edo was saying is the relationship between liquidity and asset prices is straightforward. As liquidity increases, asset appreciation takes place in the crypto market. Okay. That means more capital coming in, more participants, whether it's retail, institutional, doesn't matter. More liquidity means more participants, which translates to more trading volume. So ultimately, what drives these prices is the liquidity. And as David said earlier, as mainstream adoption takes place, more utility and use cases, that will also contribute to the price appreciation of some of these digital assets. But in essence, when there is utility and more mainstream adoption, it invites more liquidity into the market. So it's almost like a snowball effect. But ultimately, this is not an opinion, this is a fact. The driver of the markets is liquidity. Historically, you can look at the charts. As liquidity comes in, whether it's through stable coins or other means of capital flow coming into the market, that's when we have our bull runs, which happen to be every 4 years. And liquidity is what drives the stock markets too, as well. The prices for a lot of these stock prices that you see on the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 over valuations, it's driven by liquidity. So we're about to see that in the altcoin market as well very soon.
And if I can make a quick statement, might as well, you know, the thing is, who's entering liquidity into the markets right now? It's the central banks. They're printing money, right? It's all fake anyways, and it's devaluing the currency. That is, again, coming to an end. So where are they going to get the liquidity from? It's going to be XRP. David.
Anyone gonna? Oh,
Yeah, David.
No, I think, if final wrap up for my thoughts, I think we're in an amazing period of time in history. I think what we're seeing is something that I think a lot of people, in one respect, because of course there's many positives with what's going on, but I think in a lot of respects, there's probably people that have never seen such level of opportunity in generations as what we're faced with right now. And usually, the main volatility is at the beginning of something and the start of something else, and that's right kind of where we're at. And when you think about these digital assets, and I myself, although on our channel I talk a lot about XRP primarily, however, Judy and I, we're invested in about 10 other different things, none of them meme coins, and we hold heavy positions in a lot of those, as much in terms of that as what, like XRP as well. And I absolutely agree. I do believe, like right now, I think there's some 27,000 different ecosystems represented in this digital asset space. I think that's going to drop down to probably less than 100, if not less than 50 or 60 of ones that are genuinely going to take the broad market share of what's coming in the future. And I absolutely believe, look, XRP, this is something I really think is fair to throw out there. XRP as a digital asset has never once left the top 10 for market cap since its inception, regardless of the pressure put on it. And all the FUD that it's thrown its way is truly phenomenal. But to never, and I mean not ever once, leave the top 10 for market cap, that is phenomenal. And, when I look at it from, a long-term utilization, I do believe 100%, like you were saying, Versan, it will represent probably the greatest wealth transfer in the history of what the world has ever experienced. I believe that this space has the opportunity to do that. Remember this too. This space represents an opportunity for average people to front run institutions. Because, in the United States and around the wide world, we have a whole class of people called accredited investors that are already the wealthy, that get access before things even hit the market, like the rest of us don't. And this digital asset space represents one of the only opportunities I know for average everyday folks to be able to actually do that with even small amounts of investment. So like with private equity, you're looking at having to put in tens of thousands of dollars, even if you are an accredited investor. Here, you can start out with literally 10, 20 bucks and just slowly build a position. And that 10 or $20 can literally translate into thousands later on, believe it or not. It has happened. In our run, look, and Ito, you were a part of that. You were there in 2020. So was I. We were buying before the whole lawsuit hit, right? The thing is this, some of these assets went 100x plus. And just a few $100 would have translated into literally thousands and thousands of dollars. Truly amazing. And that's where I believe we're at. I think we're sitting in just such an amazing place in history. For me, I'm just so grateful, so thankful that, that God had allowed us to become aware of it, to be completely honest. That's who I give the credit to. And, I just think for a lot of people, you got to go out there and you have to decide for yourself, hey, is this something for me? And we're just, like Ito said earlier, we're sharing with you the mistakes that we've experienced and we've made so that you don't have to make those same mistakes. And maybe you can learn from that. And so for me, I really do believe this is just a tremendously amazing time of opportunity. That's what I think about it.
Nicely said, man. And yes, God has given us this opportunity. So thank you for mentioning that. Edo.
It's hard to add something.
Oh, there he is. Okay.
It's hard to add something after three brilliant individuals have spoken just before me. So I'll keep it very short. So the message is take care of your digital assets. Leave them in cold wallets. Don't trust exchanges. Secondly, don't send your XRP in the false promise of profits or someone that's going to be faking accounts. Unfortunately, on a weekly basis, I have people who get scammed and someone texts them with fake accounts of mine. Someone sent over 1,000 XRP the other day and they were very sad and upset, even with me, which honestly, I don't have control over what people are doing on the internet, unfortunately. So, guys, we don't text anyone. We're never gonna ask for your XRP. We have our official platforms. You can find us on the verified account. So be very careful with any type of scams involving Brad Garlinghouse asking you for XRP. That's not going to happen. I'm laughing, but that's very worrying because some people are losing more than they can afford with these scams. So don't believe in that false prophecies that are all everywhere on the internet. And my last message is use your time that you spend on the smartphone in a wise way. Be careful of where you are putting your attention because I see that attention is currency nowadays, and you're going to be scrolling, you're going to be watching TikToks of women dancing and all of these distractions and people selling meme coins. And I don't think you're going to make a great use of your time. So rather spend the time online either to build something for you, at least create your own audience. We know that with artificial intelligence, there'll be a whole change in the paradigm. So I think it's a great time to get started with building an audience, building your image online, and creating a powerful networking that goes beyond just borders. Just look our case here. We all met on the internet, I guess, besides Person and Vandell because they are brothers. But I think I built a huge networking just by putting out my thoughts on the internet, and I built an income. So if you are watching this, really please stop wasting your time on social media. You can really use the same time, perhaps even doing something that you love, that brings joy to you, and at the same time you are actually doing something that's going to benefit you and your loved ones, and on the long term even your future generations. So please use this time wisely on the internet. Thank you.
Very powerful message. And one final thought, just so you know, there are a lot of scammers out there, but if you ever want to reach my brother or myself, you will always be able to reach us through our website, blackswancapitalist.io. We will never send out messages to anybody. That's the only way you can reach us. Anyways, this has been a great conversation. You guys contribute so much to the space, and I'm just so humbled and I'm grateful, that we are together here. So, and thank you to our audience for being so supportive and whatnot. Please be sure to follow and support our work because we're here trying to support you guys and each other. That's how we're going to get through this.
One point, I want to say one thing regarding what Edo said, and then we'll sign off.
Okay.
You don't need to be great to start, but you need to start to be great.
That's great.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Let's end with that one.
You guys something else to say? I'm just kidding. Okay, guys. All right, guys. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day. We'll talk soon. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Take care.